Hi everyone, my name is Lee Boonstra. I'm a developer advocate on conversational AI, working from Amsterdam, and I specialize in tools such as Dialogflow, contact center AI, and speech technology.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anu Srivastava, and I'm coming to you from my kitchen in New York. Thanks for joining. I have been an engineer at Google for almost 6.5 years now, and I work in cloud developer relations, where I focus on solutions for office productivity and collaboration.
Yeah, and today we will discuss on how to build rich experiences for chatbots with tools such as Dialogflow,
And G Suite.
yeah, to work smarter. So Anu and I, we were talking about this particular use case while working with large Google Sheets. These are the Google Sheets that require many lookups, have many rows and many columns. So I guess this is a use case that we are all familiar with. And in our case, as developer advocates, yeah, we work a lot with customers across the world, but we also work a lot with sales teams within Google. And the way how sales teams in Google are organized are they're divided within clusters, and each cluster um, can have many account managers, many engineers, and many specialists working on various amount of accounts. Anu and I, we meet a lot of developers at conferences each day, and typically when we speak with developers, they always ask us like, hey, can you link us to Google engineers that can help us with our projects? We have lots of customer engineers working at Google that can help you with your project. But of course, Anu and I, we don't know everyone within Google. So, but what we do know is that there are Google Sheets around, and these Google Sheets can tell you per country who is working on what. In fact, it means that you will work with a sheet, what you see here on the screen. Now, this sheet is a fake sheet with fake names and fake account names. In reality, this means that the account names are company names, and the sheets will be much bigger. But to find up a person, the conversation will be like this. So the developer from the company asks me, he tells me like, I'm actually on the Google Assistant account and I would like to speak with someone, an engineer that is specialized in data and analytics. So I would look up in the sheet the account name, Google Assistant, and based on that, I can find out which cluster this account is in. Now, the person asked for an engineer specifically on data analytics, so I can look up in the skill column the data analytics skill, and then I can find out like who is the engineer on data analytics, and it will tell me that's Frank. It will also tell me who the account manager is and even the specialist on data analytics. So then I have the name. But again, in reality, such a sheet is much bigger. It takes a lot more time to find out the right person to contact to. So what Anu and I were thinking was like, well, wouldn't it be great if we can ask a chatbot disk? We at Google, we are working with Google Hangouts anyway. So that will be the best place to ask a question such like, who is the engineer for data analytics on the Google Assistant account? And then it will return me the answer. That will be much faster and a great experience. So chatbots. Right? Chatbots, they actually already exist since the 90s. But the difference back then versus now is that chatbots in the 90s, those were built by developers, by programmers, and they would use if-else statements to return an answer. So that would mean that if you would ask your question wrong on a different way or with spelling mistakes, that the chatbot wouldn't know what to answer. And if we fast forward to nowadays, or what we do at Google is we use AI for all our software, especially for chatbots. So the experience for chatbots would mean that when you ask a question to the chatbot uses natural language understanding to understand the question, and then we can link it to the right answer. Chatbots are all about machine learning. When you look at the Google Home, or the new name is called the Nest Hub, this is all about machine learning because you speak to such a device. The device itself is connected to the internet. It's a speaker and a microphone, but when you speak to it, it takes your spoken voice, it transcribes it to written text, then it understands the written text with natural language understanding. It can link it to the right answer. We call that intent classification or intent matching. And then it returns an answer. And the answer will be spoken out with text-to-speech models, WaveNet models, so it sounds very human-like. To build chatbots, we can use tools like Dialogflow. Dialogflow is a conversational platform, and it is specifically for building chatbots, whether it's a voice chatbot or a chatbot in a contact center or for web or social media. You can build this with Dialogflow. It makes use of machine learning. It uses natural language understanding to understand what you ask. You can link it to the right answers through intent matching, and we can even train conversations and fill slots, like capture parameters and send it to a backend. It's all cross-platform, and it comes via a web UI, so you can very easily start working in this tool. But we also provide SDKs so that developers can integrate it in their own systems. We support over 20 different languages across many different channels, and if the channel is not out of the box within Dialogflow, then you can use the SDK to integrate it in any other system you like. Dialogflow also comes within the Google Cloud, so then it's specifically for enterprises, and that means that you can make use of all the other Google Cloud components, but even more important, it comes with support and an SLA. It is compliant. You can set up user roles. You can do things like debugging, and you have an unlimited call quota. So these are all reasons for enterprises to work with Dialogflow. This is how the Dialogflow console looks like. You can see here all the intents for our chatbot. In our case, we don't have many intents, but we will use the lookup Googler intent. And the way how intent matching works is like when you create an intent, you specify training phrases. And these training phrases are used to train the model on. So I can ask things on a different way and it still figures out which one is the intent. An intent also can collect parameters and responses. The responses can be hard-coded or it can come from a system, then you select the fulfillment. Now, maybe you're wondering like why are certain words in the training phrases marked in a color? Well, this is actually the variable parts. These are the parameters used for slot filling. Because I can ask like who is the engineer on Gmail, or I can ask who is the account manager on Maps. For skill security, for skill data management, these are variable parts. Now, maybe you notice that certain sentences only have 2 colors instead of 3. In order to make our script working, Anno needs to collect the 3 parameters, role, skill, and account name, in order to query the Sheets API. So what I did is I marked all these slots as required, and that means that when people are asking questions like, can you tell me who the specialist is on security, that they need to have like a follow-up question, which asks me like, well, for which account do you want to look it up for? And once I collected all these parameters, it will send the request. In our case, the response is not hard-coded. The request comes from the Sheets API. So you need to enable the fulfillment. Let's give this a try. We're gonna use the simulator on the right side of the screen to test out our user queries. Let's write which Googler is the engineer on the Google Assistant account. You'll see that Dialogflow did the intent matching. It looked through all the intents that are available, but the one asking about looking up Googlers, that one returned the highest confidence level. So this is the one where the answers are coming from. And it returns with a fallback question because I passed in the role and the account name, but I didn't mention the skill. So I'll fill it in right now. I'm interested in security. And there you go. You see the intent that was matched, and the parameters that are gathered so that Anu can pick those up in the backend to talk to the Sheets API. I can even request a diagnostic info, so I can see an example of the fulfillment request. So this is exactly how the backend will receive it. Now let's have a look into the entity screen. When you click on entities, you can see the custom entities that I've created. So I have created a custom entity skill, which contains all the skills that are possible from the Google Sheet. So it's a mapping. And I can use synonyms so that it also listens to different wordings. So instead of asking for data analytics, I can also ask for analytics or big data, and it will return me the person for data analytics. I've created entities for all the roles, and I've also imported all the account names. There are various ways how you can import accounts. I could use fulfillments in Dialogflow for this, or code, SDK code in Dialogflow for this to load in all the account names. I could also upload entities. And then I use a CSV or JSON file with an export from a database. When you click on integrations, you can see all the integrations that Dialogflow ships out of the box with. If your integration is not in this list, you can use the SDK to integrate it with any system you like. But in our case, since at Google we all use Google Hangouts, we will make use of the Google Hangouts integration, and it works very easily. You just need to select it, and then you specify like who can install the chatbot. Well, everyone within your domain, and then you just need to make sure that your G Suite administrator from the administrator console will make sure that it allows you to install chatbots. And once you install the chatbot, that you also find this particular chatbot in your Google Hangouts so that you can start talking to it. Now the last thing is the fulfillment. You saw in the intent section that I would select or enable the fulfillment, but I didn't know where to connect to. This is what you do here in the fulfillment screen. So you can specify the URL. Now I know that Anu is using a cloud function, so I specify the URL of the cloud function here. And I think this is a great moment to switch over to Anu so she can tell you exactly how she built the script for this.
Okay, so let's start to break down how we get this chatbot going. It's different than other systems you may be familiar with because our data source is in a sheet, not like a SQL database or a NoSQL store like the apps and services you're probably familiar with, or maybe you're even running them right now. So how are we going to use Sheets with Dialogflow? With the Sheets API. So this is an interface that allows you to do almost anything you can do in the Sheets UI, but programmatically. So since we're using Firebase functions in Node, this is a package I will install to my working directory from npm, the Node package manager. So this is just a side note, but Sheets is just one of the APIs in the G Suite family. There are APIs for a lot of the productivity tools that you might already be using, and you don't even have to have a G Suite account to use most of them. So you can see here we have products like Gmail and Slides. Today we'll show you a bit of Sheets and Chat. Let's do a quick introduction to using the Sheets API because, like I said, it is different than a traditional data source, but the experience is actually similar to working with Sheets in the browser. This is Hello World for the Sheets API. If you used Sheets before, you're probably familiar with A1 notation. This is how we index cells in the spreadsheet. And those indexes are the same that we use when calling the API. Let's see what this would look like if we were to actually run it. So here we've written Hello World to that very first cell. And if you remember from the previous slide, we had to specify a spreadsheet ID. So that ID is the same ID that you see in the browser. And conveniently, this would be the same ID If we were also using the Drive API, maybe you want to share permissions. Everything works together the same way the products themselves do. So our code is going to be more complicated than just hello world, because we're looking at different parts of the sheet to find the person we need to contact. And we need to know 3 things to sort of slice the sheet. We need to know the company, so which cluster, the role, and what specialty. These are the entities Lee talked about earlier, and they dictate what parts of the sheet we need to look at in our code. Dialogflow makes getting the required parameters from the agent really easy. I don't need to worry about understanding the user input in my code. I can trust the agent to parse it all out for me. So now all I have to do is write the part that searches the sheet, and that is much more structured. So this is the start of my lookup code, creating the Sheets client and getting all the entities as variables. I'm not going to walk through the rest of the code today where we partition the sheet, but all of it is on GitHub with a link to copy the sheet, and we have set up instructions if you'd like to deep dive yourself. So this is what our system is going to look like. We start out with Sheets, then we glue it together with Dialogflow and Firebase functions, and then the UI is Chat. And this is where our teammates are already there, they're collaborating with each other, they're doing their work. And since Lee showed us how to set up the agent, let's talk about that part, the last part, Chat. So in Chat, we have 2 options on how to respond. We can go with the basic text response that looks like what when I or you type into the chat room, or we can utilize the framework to build interactive card responses. We can construct these cards with a bit of JSON. You can have headers, additional sections with widgets for images, buttons, URLs, etc. And what's nice is that this is already mobile friendly. So to display will look the same if I'm at my desktop or if I'm on the go using my smartphone. So I'll show you quickly what an example card response might look like. So this one is actually straight from the documentation. For us, all I have to do is construct the way I want our accounts card to look like in JSON, and then I put that in my fulfillment code and then push it to the Dialogflow agent, who will then send it to Chat. If you're someone who's already familiar with the Dialogflow library and cards, we are actually constructing custom payloads so we can fully customize the Hangouts chat cards. So this is a code for the custom payload that I have, and we add a little bit of like a wrapper around it that says Hangouts, and this is how the agent knows it's meant to be used in chat. This is important if you have a bot that you want to be compatible for multiple platforms. So now that we've touched on all the different components of the bot, let's finally go see it all working together in the demo. You'll see the cards that we built specifically for these sales contacts. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if this chatbot can understand my natural language input. So we have chat open here, and we have a fresh new room. So let me go ahead and add my chatbot. Here we go, Smart Accounts Bot. And I get this nice welcome message. In another bot, you probably want to make sure you have specific instructions on how to interact with the bot so you can train your users. Today, we're showing a bot in a room, but you can also add bots to direct messages. So let's try our first input query. Let's do who is on Gmail for data management. So here I have specified the account and I specified the skill, data management, but I have intentionally left out the role. So let's see what happens. Great, so I get this follow-up for that last piece of information the bot needs to figure out who I need to talk to. Let's do account manager today. Awesome. Now I know I need to contact Jolene, and I get this nicely formatted card back with all the information I might need. Let's try another one, but let's make it trickier this time. What if I have a typo and I change up the ordering? I have another question type that I ask. Will Dialogflow still understand me? Let's do, please give me an engineer on brain, but I'll misspell something. Great, so this is what I'm gonna ask. Please give, and I've misspelled give, we're missing a letter. And still, I've only partially given all the input the bot needs to do the lookup. I've given the role, engineer, and I've given the account, brain. Let's see what happens. Awesome, so I get another follow-up to get the skill, the specific skill of the person that we need to find. So let's do security. Awesome. Now the bot knows all the different pieces of information it needs, and I get back this card with the contact info. This is much more usable than a system that relies on the user to provide perfectly crafted input. If we weren't using Dialogflow, the user would probably have to perfectly type everything in the exact order, and you can only do one type of input question. Let's look at the card. I've constructed the card to show me a few pieces of information, so the cluster and email and location. Maybe I have another system that has all my contact info. If I were doing this internally at Google, I might use a contacts API to look up each person's email and desk location. Maybe you have a different system with a different API. If you look at this last widget, the image widget, it is the Google Maps API. This is specifically called static maps, and it's how you can dynamically generate map images for whatever system you might be integrating it into. I can click on it, and it'll actually show me this. I could change the URL to maybe directions or something else. So that was the happy case, the happy path, when there is someone to return. What if I ask for a role that doesn't exist or a company that's not on the sheet? What is the error case? How do we handle that? So let's test it out. Let's do, who was the account manager for networking at Acme? Acme is not a real company, and it's definitely not in our system. Awesome, we get the error card. So this is a different card that I constructed in my code, and when the sheet doesn't return someone, it returns this error card instead of the contact card that we saw earlier. So it tells you what the bot couldn't find, and it has an action for the user to make sure the data is up to date or something needs to be checked on. So if I click on this bottom button widget, it will actually go ahead and take me to the sheet so I can make sure everything's up to date in the sheet. Okay, so let's recap what we built today. We started with a tool that our coworkers were already using. Then we trained an agent to handle the natural language questions and serve them from the sheet, all directly in the product that they were already using, Chat. So no need to open a new tab to get the information that they're looking for. We also augmented this by integrating other Google services like contacts and maps. And it doesn't have to stop there. You can integrate any other service with an API. So now it's your turn. We hope we inspired you to think about solutions that you can write to help the people at your company or your organization. By using GCP and G Suite together, you can bring the power of cloud computing to everyone, not only the engineers and the developers. So here are some resources to get started. The working code for today's demo, along with a copy of the data, is on GitHub, and feel free to tweet at us for any questions or tips on how to get started. Thank you.